been quite busy. And yeah, Karen has helped us with our integrations with QuickBooks and just kind of general accounting practices for contractors in specific. She's a licensed CPA. Her website is onlineaccounting.com. And we'll include all of this information. After the webinar, we'll have the recording available. We'll have a blog post write-up as well as all of Karen's contact information if you want to get a hold of her. But with that, thanks everyone for joining us. We have the chat feature on the right side. Let us know where you're coming from. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them there as well. But with that, Karen, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you. So this on screen is a group of people that I work with every day, and that's our team. And you might notice the girls in the black are the women on our team, and the missing guys are over by the barbecue. This is our annual company family picnic, and when the photographer showed up, with the beer and the brats showed up at the same time, so our guys were over eating beer, and then I drinking beer and eating brats, and then the dog came into the photo, and then the kids came in the photo, which was real fun. So that's our kind of family-friendly group of people. The next slideshow shows we have two businesses, Online Accounting, where the CPAs like Alex talked about, and then we have another company that was recently started about a year ago that's taking over affordable training for contractors. We have a video series here on the left that is Mastering QuickBooks for Contractors, where we teach contractors, their bookkeepers, and their accountants how to do job costing as well as bookkeeping and accounting. And then we have a new video series coming out that's for real estate investors. And also our book that we've had out for ages, since I think 1995, is now gotten a new look here, The Contractor's Guide to QuickBooks. As Alex said, my name is Karen Mitchell, and what I'm going to do is explain to you today how much it costs you as a contractor to employ somebody. That way, when you leave, you know a couple of concepts that are extremely important and make up kind of the major component if you're like a framing contractor or plumbing or electrical or a general contractor that hires employees. Not only do you have a rate per hour that you pay the employee, but you also have this word called burden. We're going to calculate the burden on screen. I'm going to give you a spreadsheet that we've been using since 1993 for calculating labor burden. I'm going to break it down for you so you know how to go back and add your labor burden in there. And then we're going to talk about a concept that's really important, and that is throughout the country there's two different groups or camps. One is the keep it simple, and the other one is a fully loaded labor burden. And they're very different from one another, but they start at the keep it simple, and that's what we're going to teach today. And as we're going through this and kind of defining it, what I want you to keep in mind is that the method that you use will be the method that you use when you're building in your labor costs in your estimating. So it's really important in construction accounting that people understand what their estimating is doing, or what you're doing with your estimating, so that your actual cost reporting, estimate to actual, is comparing apples to apples. It doesn't help us to figure out how we're doing on a job, which is job costing, if we don't have the estimating and the accounting married together or doing or acting the same way. So we're going to explain all of those three things to you today so that you can feel comfortable when you hire somebody and you're estimating and you're looking at your job cost reports, that they're all coming together properly. So how much are my employees costing me? This concept probably comes up 3 or 4 times a week. Well, I'll get a new contractor and they'll email me and go, oh, I don't know. I want to hire somebody, but I don't know if I can afford it. I don't know what to charge. Well, here we are. We're going to dive in so you feel a little bit more comfortable before you hire somebody. What is it really costing you? So let's say that we hire somebody and it costs us $19 an hour, and that is just for the hourly rate. So we're going to pay somebody $19 an hour. On top of that, at minimum, you have your employer payroll taxes. And on screen as of today, which is April 16th, 2019, our Social Security taxes are 6.2%. So that means somebody who earns $19 an hour, or somebody that you pay $19 an hour to, you're going to pay an additional $1.18 for Social Security taxes. That's the biggest hit right there, most of the time. The next thing is Medicare taxes, 1.45%. This is a smaller one, but you need to make sure you remember that it's there. That's only 28 cents if you're paying somebody $19 an hour. That gets added on. Then you'll have SUTA, and SUTA, by the way, is State Unemployment and Training, and that ranges based on your classification. How many people have you had on unemployment through the state? Right now, throughout the country, our state unemployment costs are very low. They're running about 1%, unless, of course, you've had a lot of people on unemployment. So let's say that it's 1.05%. That costs you about 20 cents an hour. And then we have FUTA. You notice that I have a $7,000 number there. The FUTA caps, it's federal unemployment, but FUTA caps at $7,000, and it's 0.008 or 0.8%. That doesn't cost much. So on the employee's first $7,000, it's 15 cents an hour. The other burden items that you need to keep in mind are your workers' comp, and that varies. So in our example, we're going to use, let's say, 10%. In the state of Washington, you have L&I, which is labor and industries. Those rates, and it's the only state that does that, they're based on a per hour basis, and the employer pays portion of it, and the employee pays a portion of it. Throughout the country, workers' comp is done exactly the same way, which is a percentage of the employee's hourly rate, except for Washington, which has that L&I. And then there's a general liability component. And now what we're going to be talking about today relates to general liability that focuses on payroll. You'll have general liability that'll be based on either gross or payroll and subcontractors. Keep in mind, this is not all of general liability, it's only the labor component to that. And that's just, again, to keep it really simple. Other things that you might want to keep in mind when you're paying employees are your benefits. If your company issues or has the ability for the employer, that would be you, to pay medical insurance, this is not the employee's portion, this is the employer's portion. The employer's medical insurance is included in your labor burden and how much it costs you, as well as dental and vision insurance or any other company paid employee benefit. Also, we calculate in vacation if it's offered, sick pay, and holiday pay. Here's a spreadsheet on screen, and it goes over what we just talked about. Now, you'll be able to download this. This is going to be key to you being able to do what we're talking about when we're done with this. The spreadsheet is hourly labor with burden by classification. Now, you might be wondering, why do I have it by classification? You should, before you start estimating jobs, have this spreadsheet filled out for each classification. Here, you would enter in your company name, for example, quality construction, and classification in this case is carpenter. So we have a period here, which is all of 2019. We created this on January 16th of 2019 for a carpenter. So on average, if we have more than one carpenter working for us, you would come up with what the hourly rate is for the highest paid carpenter. I know people tend to average it out, and you're not going to do that. I don't want you to average. You're going to pick the highest, because when you're estimating, you're not sure when somebody works on the job whether it's going to be the highest paid or the lowest paid, and we want to make sure that we don't lose money on these projects. So we have a straight time here, an overtime, and a double time. So if we look at the rate per hour of 19, here we're adding in, and this number won't change unless, and it hasn't changed for many years. So usually you'll leave this alone. $1.18, here's your Medicare that I was talking to you about earlier, 28 cents. These are per hour. This is $19 an hour, $1.18 an hour for Social Security, $8.28 for Medicare. Federal unemployment, even though it runs out, we leave it on there for the whole classification for the year in case we hire somebody new. This one, you would vary. So you would have to get your state unemployment rate and fill it into this box, and it automatically calculates for you. And then if you have other state taxes, you would enter it into this spot. And then workers' comp, this is also going to vary depending on whether you have L&I or workers' comp, and it would be a workers' comp classification for a carpenter. In this case, we put in 10%, and that's honestly fairly low. Look at this. It's really important not to forget workers' comp, because look how big of a component it is. It's $1.90 an hour. So in this case, just at a low rate of 10%, and of course it varies, it's all over the place, and your workers' comp will depend on the coverage that you have, or actually the classification, as well as
Hey, Karen. Sorry to interrupt. I don't think I can hear you. Kind of cut out there for a second. We can still see the spreadsheet here, but I cannot hear you. I think Karen might be having some microphone issues here. Give it a second. Maybe the mic died. Maybe it was unplugged. But Karen, if you can hear me, we're seeing that we can no longer hear your audio. Looks like we've got a couple of our attendees that are saying that the audio isn't working as well. Karen, if you're there, we cannot hear you. Sorry about that, everyone. I was able to get a hold of Karen. It sounds like the mic died, but I've informed her it was just for a minute, and we're back on the spreadsheet here, so we're getting that worked out, and then we'll be all set to go here. So Karen, if you can hear me, everything is still good with the presentation here. We just finished up. I think we cut out right at the end of the labor rates plus burden spreadsheet, and I think we were moving on to the next slide there. But still can't hear you. We'll kind of wait a second here, see if we can get you back. And Karen, just a heads up up top where you can see your admin console, the little microphone. Just remember that it's blue when it's on. So if we're turning the microphone back on, it may need to be just, defaulted back to the on position. Sometimes that happens when my mic cuts out. But thanks again, everyone, for joining us. We're just talking about labor rates with burden today. So hopefully this helps you better prepare for the additional costs on top of just the hourly rate that we're going to be charging our customers. And in your Clear Estimates account, this takes place in your options, in your labor rate editor. Obviously, we already provide rates for your area that include a benefits package that's similar to what Karen is talking about, but this is going to help you hone in on those specific costs and a few extras that we don't include. And again, we're just working out an audio issue right now. We'll be back in just a moment. And Karen, if you can hear me, still can't hear you, but we can see your presentation. Everything is working well there. And hopefully we can get the mic back working here shortly. Paul, good question. Yeah, so the information that we include, so the information that Clear Estimates includes when you go to your options page, you click your labor rate editor, it's going to be that second red arrow on the left side pointing right. When you click the link inside of there that says click here to browse our recommended labor rates, these rates again come from Remodel Max, but they include unemployment insurance, workers' comp, Social Security, and Medicare, and a 9.75 for benefits such as vacation, sick leave, and medical. Yeah, so again, these are the rates that Clear Estimates provides. We update these every year. So we just got some new rates 4 months ago. And again, they're courtesy of Remodel Max. You can find them by going to your options, to your labor rate editor. Good question, Mark. And I saw a couple other good questions here. Let's see here. Brooke and Mark, a couple good questions. Those are going to be more for Karen. So we'll definitely star those and bring those up as soon as we're back online with Karen. Okay, everyone, I'm going to jump back on a call with Karen and see if we can figure out the microphone issue here and expedite that process. I will be right back.
turned up the volume. Yeti microphone all the way up to 90.
Hey, Karen, can you hear me? Karen, can you hear me? Karen?
Mic right now. Okay, I've just turned on the mic. Can you hear me?
Hey, Karen. Yeah, Karen, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Test, test, test.
Karen, can you hear me?
Alex, I can't hear you even. I can't even hear you. Oh. Can you hear me now? Okay. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I lost you for a little bit. I had to plug in a microphone. I don't know what happened to my computer. I don't know where we left off, but I'm going to start back here at the spreadsheet and talk about the rate per hour. We've already, and I'm assuming that you heard all the information about how to calculate each one of these items, and that's the labor burden, the total labor burden, $6.79. The total hourly labor cost is $25.79, with 35.74 being your labor burden. And in this case, we're following what we call that keep it simple method. Over here, there are two different methods that you should be aware of that we keep talking about. One is this keep it simple stupid that people like Michael Stone and others talk about across the country. Then there's another one, fully loaded labor burden. The difference between the two and the importance that you need to know about, it'll be coming up. But in the keep it simple method, all your direct costs to the labor burden, so in other words, all the costs here are allocated, hour and burden, to a job, and you'll be estimating your rate per hour for an employee at $25.79. It's fairly simple, even though a lot of people say that's not that simple. The rest is built into your overhead rate. And then the second is the fully loaded labor burden. In the fully loaded labor burden, in the dollar per hour rate with burden would be including individual or indirect costs. Those indirect costs could be cell phones, autos, and cell phones for field employees, auto costs like gas and registration, license and repairs for, again, field employees, tools and supplies used on jobs, and other costs like warranty costs. It's much more difficult accounting-wise to keep track of all of the indirect costs and allocating it to labor. As you can imagine, it would require you to have a much more difficult and lengthy spreadsheet. And then accounting-wise, we would have to back all of that out of overhead costs, come up with a different overhead cost, and then put it into the hourly rate. So when you're first starting, the worst thing you can do is try to do fully loaded labor burden. Once you're big enough and you have a full-time controller, you might want to do it, but think about it and calculate it first just to see if it would make sense to you to do it. Now, one of the most important things to keep in mind is that over time, estimating software has really changed, and it's grown a tremendous amount. Clear Estimates is probably one of the easiest estimating software to use. I really like it, or at least my clients talk to me about how much they like it. I was introduced to it at least 10 years ago by one of the estimating gurus, Michael Gorman, and he talks about how this is the easiest to use estimating software for contractors. And what I like is that we get to pick in the estimating software nowadays whether we're going to do labor plus burden, or the keep it simple method, or the fully loaded labor burden method. And that wasn't the case. When I worked with my dad's construction company when I was really young, we had one estimating number that we could use for each classification, and it included a whole bunch of additional costs, and we weren't quite sure what those included. They gave us an idea in this estimating software, but we were stuck using that, and it took a lot of time accounting-wise to get back to matching apples to apples, which is what did the estimating software have built in versus what did we have in our accounting side matching. And the most important part to remember here is that when you're doing your accounting and keeping track of labor burden and labor, we want it to match. We want the estimate to actual job cost reporting to be in alignment. It doesn't help us to look at estimated cost for labor for framing of $87,000 when we come back and we haven't tracked the same thing in our estimate that we do in our actuals. So if it comes back and says, well, we've only spent $30,000 on labor and that actual cost only includes an hourly rate, well, we're not going to have a good match. So you want to spend some time, try to figure out how to get your estimating rate per hour and your actual rate per hour to pull really good job cost reports so that we can have a nice feedback loop for your estimate and your estimator. Because if you're constantly losing on concrete, because concrete's the thing that has the most labor in it or framing, and it's not materials, it's the labor, then we can pull that apart a little bit and find out that we need to increase the concrete portion of the estimate from now on because your team maybe isn't as good at concrete. Maybe we should sub that out, things like that. So here I put a information about where you can go to get get the Excel document that we looked at, as well as this presentation. And Alex, can you hear me? Oh, I forgot Alex can't hear me.
Yes, Karen, can you hear me now?
Alex? Okay, Alex read the question to me about general liability and workers' comp. Let me go back there and show you on the spreadsheet. The reason that you wouldn't want to have general liability and workers' comp, actually you could put general liability in the overhead, that's fine. But workers' comp is based on the amount of time or the hours spent on a project, or it's based on gross payroll. So we would, and it's a big component. You'll notice here if this or this company has a workers' comp rate of 10%, it's $1.90 an hour. So because workers' comp is based, and this is throughout all of the states, it's based on the gross payroll that you issue to an employee. We would want to make sure that the workers' comp is part of the labor burden, because it varies too much. What you don't want is to estimate to your workers' comp coverage that you're going to have $200,000 in wages paid in a certain year, but you end up with $800,000, and by mistake, you haven't included that cost in your labor actual costs. So, but the general liability, if they don't base it on payroll, if it's based on gross, then you would want to put it as part of your overhead costs. That's a good question. So yes, what we're talking about here is, in this case, it's for the classification for employees that work for you that are carpenters. They're not for subcontractors. A subcontractor gets not just $19 an hour with all the labor rate. A 1099 subcontractor, let's say it's a framer that comes in, they'll charge you $40 an hour. And to be equivalent to here, because they have to go back and pay all of their costs. They have to pay these at their company level. So this would only be for employees and not subcontractors. So Alex, if I heard that right, it is, should a painter in-house, carpenter, painter, plumber, if they're doing it could be one person that's really handy and are very talented, and they're doing different jobs, that one person might have a blended rate. For example, it might not be a carpenter. It could be have a lead carpenter that knows, and he's kind of working with a number of the trades. That hourly rate would be for lead carpenter, for example, and it would be one rate. However, if you have a painter, a person who's doing painting that's separate from carpentry, you would have more than one of these spreadsheets, one for the painter that gets maybe $25 an hour, and one for the carpenter or carpentry area, that classification that gets paid the highest this rate per hour. So in other words, if it's a leads tend to manage a lot of people who do different tasks. It would be the leads rate per hour. Or if it's a person that just ends up that they can do a lot of different tasks, that you might not have as a classification. It might be by person in that case. I'm not able to go through that here, but all of our books and our videos, they cover it. It takes a long time. Well, actually, it doesn't take a long time to set up. It's the first step is learning how to do it. So you can buy our book, The Contractor's Guide to QuickBooks, which includes payroll and putting burden into payroll, or the videos. Both those video series will walk you through a step at a time how to set that up in QuickBooks. And because we only have an hour, we don't have anywhere near enough time to be able to do that. Well, we could, but I think we would bore a bunch of people. It's more of the hands-on. That's the thing that a good bookkeeper or accountant, most of the time your accountant would set that up for you in the very beginning. But we could look at what would be really important, or what I'd like to do, is the outcome. What would it look like to have an estimate to actual job cost report that would have labor and burden built into it? Because people running companies aren't necessarily the person who are sitting down there and going through the nitty gritty of setting up QuickBooks in this example, but they would be wanting to and needing to look at the estimate to actual report with labor and burden built in. I haven't loaded that yet. So if I just finished everything and I gave it to our website guy to upload. I think it was yesterday, and it takes them usually a couple days. So you could either email me, Karen at onlineaccounting.com, and I can email you the contents, or you can wait a couple days and you'll be able to download it on that website. I don't know if it is as much of what's accidentally calculated in. It's more of what doesn't get calculated in. Just knowing what you should add in there for the keep it simple method, and having this spreadsheet available with some of the calculations already built in for labor burden. Some people forget that you do have FUTA, even though it's a tiny amount. It's 15 cents per hour. It's important to have it in there so you as an owner aren't eating that cost later. Does that make sense? If you're interested in any other videos, I'd welcome for you to email me and let me know, because we're doing all summer long, we're doing a bunch of free videos for contractors to help them out with different questions. So if I get enough responses or enough questions, we'll put them together, and our group here will put together some additional videos. Let's put them up on our Online Accounting Academy website, and you guys will be able to access them. Thank you, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Alex again with Clear Estimates. Thanks again for joining us. I know that was a bit of a bumpy ride there with the microphone troubles, but I greatly appreciate you bearing with us while we took care of that. Sometimes these microphone issues happen. It's just a part of what we do. To be honest, that's something that just happens. We do endless amounts of testing. The first 3 webinars were extremely smooth for those of you that were with us, but unfortunately we just had some difficulties here and had to reschedule and had more difficulties. So again, I really appreciate everyone joining us here. Hopefully we were able to get most of those questions answered. If not, please email me questions that may have not been answered or lost there. I'm pretty sure I got to everything. But again, thanks for joining us. I'm going to get that spreadsheet from Karen. I'm going to include it in our post-webinar digest so everybody has access to it. So we'll make sure everybody gets that document. We'll have the recording available, and we'll have the blog post right up. But again, thanks everyone for joining us. I deeply apologize for the issues here. Karen did her best to join us. We definitely thank her very much for joining us, especially in time for tax season here. And then Paul, don't forget, I've got that question for Remodel Max that I'll get you these specific percentages on the burden that's included in our rates. But if anyone else has questions, I know it's been kind of chaos here. If you have questions that were not answered, definitely email them to me. My email is alex@clearestimates.com. Happy to relay those over to Karen. Karen is extremely nice, extremely knowledgeable, just some technical difficulties today, and she would be more than happy to answer those questions. But with that said, we'll go ahead and end the presentation here. Again, you can reach me at alex@clearestimates.com. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll have the webinar blog up in a couple hours here, as well as the recording on our YouTube channel. I'll be sure to email everyone here. And if it's easier for you to just reply to that email with your questions, that's definitely an option as well. So you'll be hearing from me shortly. And again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. And thanks again for joining us. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.